And speaking of the man, here in hour number 2, Jason está aquí. Welcome.
What's up?
Where are you?
I am right down the street from a 5A Elite 8 high school for the first time in boys soccer history. I'm in Flippen, Georgia.
Yes, and that is Flippen, Georgia.
Yes, supporting the Flippen Birds.
Yes, the Flippen Birds. Eagles Landing High School, upper left-hand corner of your brackets as you fill them out in pen. And Eagles Landing has made it to that particular round of the playoffs. What has it been like for Eagles Landing High alum Jason Longshore to see this happen?
We're all very confused by this because this has never happened before. The 30th anniversary of soccer at the school. 1994 was the first time that they had a team. First time they really had a graduating class as well. I was in the 95 class. 94, they didn't play a region schedule. They just played games that they could get. 95 was the first year we played a region schedule. We got into the state tournament then. Back then you had sub-region titles and it was all confusing. And
yes.
Won the sub-region, got knocked out by Woodward, and they've had a couple of runs over the years, but this is the deepest that they've been. It's really cool to see. They'll play Midtown, and then the winner of that plays the winner of Dalton and McIntosh, which is a heavyweight battle on the opposite side of that bracket. So it's been fun to see all of these brackets and teams show out here as we get into the quarterfinals and semifinals next week.
No doubt about it. Before I hand it over to Maddie and Jarrett for questions, how was it last night at the Herb with Perry and Trinity Christian on the Soccer Down Here network?
The Panther Pit. It was cool. Perry got the win. Interesting game. Trinity Christian was missing one of their top players due to injury in the last regular season game. That definitely had an impact on their offense. Their goalkeeper, McCord, was outstanding freshman. She kept them in it, made a couple of outstanding saves. The goal was a free kick from about 30 yards out. Really good game and a great atmosphere down at Perry. Had a chance to catch up with Coach Dooley afterwards. They're excited about their trip up to Lovett. They know how difficult that's going to be, but this is a team in Perry that their last 4 years in region play, they are 44-0. They've conceded only 3 goals this year. Now, we are talking a different level of competition, and that's the challenge for teams in some regions when they get out of region and Perry get to the quarterfinals. It's a big deal. Can they take that next step? It's going to be a huge challenge.
Ladies first, Madison Cruz for Jason Longshore here in hour number 2.
Ooh, I guess my question is, hold on. My voice just dropped a whole octave. Forgive me. We're back now. Everything's fine. I guess from looking at all the other scores around the Georgia high school playoff scene, were there any games that surprised you? Were there any matchups that you were interested in and kept up with as you were calling the Perry game? I know it was kind of difficult, but when you had the chance to look at some of them, like, were there any that shocked you?
Yeah, nothing yesterday. I think one of the bigger games that I had circled was on the girls' side in 5A with McIntosh and Chambly from earlier in the week. Chambly, the defending state champions, but as we saw them earlier in the year, they're not the same team. Some of their top players weren't playing at that point. They put it together and went on a huge run in region play and were really difficult. And I don't know exactly how their roster evolved. And look, this is the challenge, I think, when you're talking high school soccer, and you see it on both sides, boys and girls, but you see it in different ways in different schools. We've seen some Atlanta United Academy players go back and play their senior year in high school. Luke Hutzel had a great year at Archer. Stephen Herlock has played in high school alongside playing in the academy. So you're seeing some players drop in and drop out in schools into some of these teams. And it's fascinating to see those effects. Chambly last year was one of the best girls teams that maybe the state has ever had. And when you're talking about a player like Soleil Washington, who then played in a World Cup, maybe as she starts to look at what's next for her future, playing her senior year in high school doesn't fit where she's headed. For others, maybe it does fit. So high school soccer, and look, I mean, John, you probably see this with high school football as well, and it's going to evolve where players will come and go and drop in and drop out. I know it's going to happen in basketball as well, as you have alternative routes to whatever your career ends up being. It's going to be a fascinating subplot to all of it, but the growth and quality level of the game across the board has been the biggest thing for me as we've been able to get out this week. And the two games that we've done have both been very close, very competitive, well played, well coached as well. Some interesting things going on tactically. So I think that's only going to improve as we continue to progress.
I guess my question for you, Jason, is looking at all of this, and I know you're down in Middle Georgia right now, and it's tough to keep track of everything.
Hey, Flippen's not quite Middle Georgia, Jarrett. Let's chill out a little bit. No offense to Middle Georgia, but we're not that far away.
Yeah, how close are you to the Nat line then?
I mean, Flippen is above the Nat line, I believe.
Okay, well, God bless it for it. I don't want to be south of the Nat line if I can help it.
You've never heard of Flippen, Georgia, have you?
I thought you were looking it up at first.
No, it's not officially a town, I think, but it's next to McDonough.
That's awesome, though. I love that it's the Flippen Birds, too.
We were the Flippen Birds. That was what we said in high school.
Yeah, the Jodico Road exit. Jodico Road and Flippen. That's where they are.
Yeah, we're the Flippen Birds.
When you said Flippen, the first thing that went in my mind was the mascot has to be a bird, right? Yes. Okay,
well,
you said yes.
Well, then you add it's Eagles Landing, and of course, if you're Eagles Landing, you have to be the Eagles. I mean, there's just no way around that, right? You can't be something else.
No.
So Eagles Landing, Golden Eagles, and then of course we are the Flippen Birds.
Yes.
Perfect.
So, do we need to market a T-shirt now for the Flippen Birds since they've made the playoffs?
The fact that it hasn't been done already is very disappointing.
I think we need to add the Flippen Birds to our gear site, no doubt.
I guess before we get to all the shenanigans that are coming up this weekend, I want to ask about the rest of the high school playoffs. For those who are not in the know, is there any, I guess, for lack of a better word, and because when I ask this, I don't mean it insultingly, is there any Cinderella sort of story that people can keep an eye on of a team who, quote unquote, aren't supposed to be here according to some people, but just keep winning?
I think the stories you're looking for in that, like last year it was Roswell in the girls' side in 6A, who were the fourth team out of the region, but then went on a run and won the state title. That's really difficult to do. There's still a few teams that are alive like that. I'm always looking at the teams from outside the metro areas for them to make runs. That's always exciting to me, just looking at the growth of the game. We know where some of the powerhouses are and what to look for there. But I love to see a story like Perry. You know, can Perry come up to Atlanta and beat Lovett? I think a lot of people would look at Perry as a Cinderella story. A school without a big soccer pedigree, but making one as we speak. So Eagles Landing is another one. I mean, that's a Cinderella story. If they beat Midtown in Atlanta this weekend or this week, and then get to play in a state semifinal against either Dalton or McIntosh, I mean, that's never happened for Eagles Landing. It's never happened for a Henry County school that I can think of. You've had a couple schools make runs here and there. You've had players go on and play in college, but it hasn't happened often. I think the games that you're starting to look at, you know, we've talked a lot about Dalton McIntosh. That's two blue bloods in very different parts of the state, different styles, different makeups of those teams. That's going to be a blast. But I'm looking at Perry. I'm looking at Eagles Landing, obviously. Freeman, who made a run last year in the girls' side to the state championship game, can they continue to progress? Those are the ones that come to mind, that we're starting to see some emerging teams in the state and from places that you might not expect.
Yeah. Northside Columbus is a 4 seed that's won twice. LaGrange is a 4 seed that's won twice. We're going to have LaGrange's head coach on, and Soccer's in Session Live, along with John Bowen from Starters Mill. You've got programs like Fitzgerald, who could have both boys and girls teams in the final 8 if they get to the win today.
Yep.
Jeff Davis, we've talked to Coach Lawson. They're close. Tonight, if you're anywhere near the Pinelands, Appling County at Jeff Davis, AA boys, good luck getting a ticket. I want pictures. That's going to be wall-to-wall people, and that's going to be a fantastic environment for football in Middle Georgia there in the Pinelands in Jeff Davis County.
Yeah, that's been the thing that I think has been the coolest to see this season is the atmospheres and how they've developed. And when you hear, like last night at Perry, when the Perry boys team was there to support the girls team and making chants like they've heard at Atlanta United games or on TV and making noise and supporting their other team at the school, that stuff is so cool. And you're seeing the effects of what Atlanta United fandom and culture and all of that is having on soccer all over the state. It's massive, and it's only really starting to take hold as you now have kids in high school who have grown up knowing what a pro soccer team is like because they've had it for most of their soccer life. That's only going to continue to grow and be more impactful over the next generations.
All right, let's get into Atlanta United. When are you leaving for Chicago, by the way?
In a few hours.
Okay. Atlanta United, Chicago down here at Mercedes-Benz. Atlanta United took care of business. I guess the first question is for Atlanta United to take care of business at Soldier Field. What is the injury situation, and how are folks looking on the injury sheet and the availability sheet heading north?
Sounds like Yorgos Yakimakis is back to maybe not full fitness, but back to starting level fitness with a good week of training for him. Stian Gregerson has trained this week. It's been modified, but he has trained consistently. So Gonzalo Pineda said yesterday expects him to play a role on Saturday. So I would assume he's available off the bench. No Shande Silva. He had a re-aggravation, it sounds like, of the injury that had kept him out previously. Williams and TRA are progressing, but they're not ready yet. So I think the biggest thing is getting Yakimakis back in from the start, because one of the elements as you look at Atlanta United in 2024 and you try to make sense of some of these weird goals that have happened. I mean, last year you had some very specific kinds of mistakes that we talked about in terms of goals conceded. This team's much better defensively. There's just no way around it. But they have given up these weird goals. So, okay, what are you looking at to get results in some of these games? For me, I think they have to play better in the first half. And you look at where Atlanta's scoring their goals, it is predominantly in the second half, which is not a bad thing. It's just when you can get goals early, because we've talked about this a lot about game state. You get goals early, you can then take care of your business earlier as well. And this is a team, and this is a league where, you get multiple goal leads, typically you're going to get wins. And if you can get those early and not have to suffer through 90 minutes to where one weird out of character mistake can flip the momentum and crush you, you're in a much better position. Getting Yorgos Yakimakis to start is a big help in doing that. But you've got to be better in the first half on the road, in my opinion, in Chicago, to be able to make it more comfortable to get a result coming out of there.
Maddie Cruz for Jason.
Yeah, I mean, from what we saw, obviously, in training, a lot of the discussion has been about how the team is going to respond because of the last couple of matches, especially with the film review and what we know and everything like that. I mean, in your opinion, have you noticed a shift? Have you noticed anything more specifically that seems to be that they were working on in training? And also, too, what needs to be done in order to go into Chicago tomorrow and get another 3 points and really come out of that stronger than before.
Yeah, I don't think it's things that you're going to see on the field and in training, because I don't think it's anything about the tactics. I don't think it's anything about the way that the team plays. I don't think it's game model. I didn't think it was last year either, and I think last year you had a different issue. This year, in my opinion, it's putting games away, and it is making the right decisions at the right moments. The Edwin Mosquera decision to play the ball back against Philadelphia, the decision was correct. The execution was wrong. Last week against Cincinnati, the execution was wrong on the short corner that gave Cincinnati the opening, and they go and break and score. The execution was wrong, but the decision was also wrong. That's a moment where you have to weigh risk reward in doing that. The reward is pretty good if you pull that off, because that's a sequence that we've seen work very well for Atlanta United. But the risk is too high in that moment. And that's the overall, I think, awareness. And look, I think people will take comments made by players and coaches and maybe make them too general, or try to find a narrative in the comment that it's looking a little too hard. When players and Pineda talk about focus and in these moments, it's not about saying they're not paying attention to the game that they're playing. That's the simplistic way of looking at it. That's what we would have in a U10 or a U12 game, where we're talking about a kid getting distracted by a plane flying overhead. That's not what happens here. Like, it's not focused to that degree. It's focused to the degree of, you're in a huge stadium, everybody's screaming and going nuts. You have a 1-goal lead. You feel like you have the momentum. You feel really good about where you are. You like this idea to play a short corner in that moment because it's worked, and it's something you've worked on, and it's something you have confidence in. But you have to process very quickly, under a lot of pressure, is it worth trying it here, where we just made 3 subs? Guys are trying to get organized. And if we don't execute this well, we could be giving up a break the other way. That's the kind of focus we're talking about. We're not talking about guys not caring, not paying attention, off daydreaming. That's not what we're talking about. So let's not oversimplify things. We're talking about processing decisions with a lot of stuff going on in a very short period of time. That's what separates good from great. And that's where you are right now, because you outplayed Philadelphia. You should have gotten 3 points there. You did. Cincinnati, you slightly outplayed, not by a wide margin. It was a much tougher game. It was 2-50-50 for me, and that's something we've talked about with Cincinnati over the years. They do a good job of making games transition-based. I don't like that kind of a game. I don't feel like you have the control. But you outplayed Cincinnati. You had the 1-goal lead. You were in control. You were in a good spot. And because of those moments, the game flips on you. The other side of it, and something else you won't see on the training pitch, and I don't think will necessarily be a film review thing. I think it's a conversation thing. In those moments where, all right, execution combined with the decision, things go against you. You go from a lead to maybe a lesser lead, or a lead to a draw. How do you react? And it's hard. Look, it's not easy. You have all the momentum, and it's like the wind gets sucked out of you. Like a balloon, the air goes out. Like, that happens. That's real. You're not robots. Like, this is real emotion. How do you handle it? I mentioned it in New York City. I thought they did a great job of, when they conceded the penalty, coming together and making sure, hey, we're okay. We're the better team right now. We have to go get a goal to equalize here, but we're the better team. Don't let one turn into 2. Now, against Philadelphia and against Cincinnati, that happened. That's got to change, because mistakes will happen. Bad decisions will happen. Great players make mistakes. Great players make bad decisions from time to time. It can't be multiplied like it was against Philadelphia and Cincinnati. And that's where the team's got to have that inner belief, that inner confidence, and where players waver in that, because everybody does, even the greats. someone has to take control. If that's Brad Kazan, if that's Brooks Lennon, if that's Yorgos Yakimakis, if that's other leaders within the team, they've got to take control in those moments. And you can't let games get away from you when the momentum flips. That's where you've got to hold on. That's where you've got to sustain. That's where you've got to survive to flip the momentum back your way.
Jarrett, last question for Jason, because Jason's got to drive home and pack and go to Chicago.
That's
yes.
It's overrated. He can get in a U-Haul with John Candy and go in a polka van. So what do?
No.
Those aren't pillows.
No, definitely no.
Just the flat no. I want to ask about the left wing and how you progress with this position in early 2024. It's an area that you haven't gotten the consistent production that you've looked for out of it. Shante Silva, even when he's been healthy, has underachieved, I think, from what your expectation was. Tyler Wolff hasn't recaptured yet what he did in the second half of 2023. And Evan Mosquera looks like a monster that you want to put on the field in the last 45 minutes of games. How do you deal with that left wing and try and maximize the productivity there to counter what you're already getting on the right side?
Somebody's got to make it their own. That's just what it comes down to. Somebody's got to grab that position and claim it. Silva hasn't, and he's had injuries. So, he hadn't claimed it fully before. He was pretty good to start the season. Tyler Wolff had opportunities, hasn't claimed it. Derek Etienne tried to get back into the conversation, didn't. Edwin Mosquera, I think, is the guy right now. He's the one that I think is who should start. And I didn't think, and I think I might be the only one, I didn't think he had a bad game against Cincinnati. I think right now he's a player who is probably more impactful off the bench. You don't have that luxury at the moment because I think he's your best option to start as well. You have to figure that out. Does it get into a conversation of moving Lobjanidze over to that side and playing Mosquera on the right, or bringing a Luke Brennan into the conversation? He's got to show that he's ready. I think he's made a jump. I think he had a good season last year. I thought he was better than the numbers showed with MLS Next Pro. I thought he had a good preseason. I think he's grown a little bit. I think he's got the size to be able to handle physicality in MLS. It is a step up from Next Pro. If nobody claims the position right now, I think you're gonna have that door open for Brennan, and maybe that door opens in the Open Cup, and that might be the opportunity for him to stake his claim there. But the longer it stays open, the more you've got to figure out how do you get more balanced production? Because if you're lopsided to the right, teams will start to game plan for that. Teams will start to take that away from you. And they'll say, beat us on the opposite side. And somebody's got to do that. And how you do that is going to be a big factor. And everything else that we've talked about, putting games away, getting better starts, all those things, you've got to have more production from the left side. And you don't want to do that by taking Caleb Wiley and doing different things with him, not moving him to the wing, but asking him to make a bunch of runs forward, because then that means Lennon has to stay home a little bit more, and you don't want to take away from the right side. You need your left winger to be more productive, to have more gravity, to draw defenders that way. Go back to the Columbus game last year in the playoffs where Shante Silva had that gravity. You played to him consistently. That opened the game up for the right side. You've got to get back to that one way or another. If it's Silva when he gets healthy, if it's Wolff stepping up and showing what he did last year, especially in the second half, if it's Mosquera showing that he can play 60, 75 minutes and be impactful, you have to get something out of one of those three. And if you don't, then the door's open for Luke Brennan, and he's got to take that opportunity. You never know when that door opens for you as a young player breaking through. Sometimes it's injury, sometimes it's lack of form, sometimes it's a combination of all of the above. If it opens for Luke, he's got to take it. He's got the ability. I think he's got some things that really outside of Mosquera, and no one else has the 1v1 ability that Brennan has. Can he run with that opportunity if he gets it? I don't know. These next few games, and especially that Open Cup game, are going to be really interesting to determining who is your left winger in the biggest moments the rest of the way.
Broadcast plans for Chicago, sir.
7:30, Five Stripes Countdown on 92.9 The Game, the Odyssey app, 8:40 kickoff. We're not on Apple TV MLS season pass this week. They haven't added the road radio yet. Keep letting them know that you'd like to have that if you do, and you can sync us up with Odyssey. It's actually really close. Use the Odyssey app. That's the best way to do it. And full-time report will follow, and then be back home. And then, look, it's a busy weekend for all of us. Maddie and John will be up in Canton for the Georgia Impact kickoff for their WPSL season. That's tonight. You'll hear some content coming out of that over the weekend. Sunday, Atlanta United 2. John will have the call for you on that in the afternoon against Chicago Fire 2. I'm doing a show down in McDonough. It's a fundraiser for the Southern Crescent Soccer Foundation at Sweet Auburn Barbecue in McDonough. Probably we'll talk some Eagles Landing soccer, probably talk some Georgia Revolution as well, and we'll recap the weekend with Atlanta against Chicago, both on the first and the second team level.
Flippen Birds. We got to add that to the stacks of the gear.
Let's go, Flippen Birds. Let's go.
All right, Jason's got to go catch a plane and get ready for that. Be safe, my friend. Great call last night. Another cool environment on the network with Perry hosting, our friends from Trinity Christian. Just be safe. Have a good call. We'll catch up with you soon.
Adios, y'all.